The fluorescent lights of Walker's roadside diner buzzed overhead, a constant companion to Samantha Monroe's late-night shift. She stood behind the counter, mechanically wiping down the same spot she'd cleaned 10 minutes ago, her dark brown eyes fixed on the notebook hidden beneath the counter. Her latest entry stared back at her. Sometimes I wonder if staying small is easier than risking growth. At least disappointment can't find you when you're invisible. The thought made her fingers twitch, and she caught herself before the familiar habit of cracking her knuckles could take over. At 29, Sam had mastered the art of containing her nervous tells, just as she'd perfected the way her ponytail hung just so, keeping her long brown hair from falling into her face during the endless hours of serving coffee and pie to truckers and late-night wanderers. The bell above the door chimed, and Sam's head snapped up, customer service smile already in place. It died on her lips as she watched him walk in. Cassian Elijah Rowe moved through the space like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. His gray-green eyes swept across the diner, taking in the worn leather booths and the vintage road signs decorating the walls. Before landing on her, recognition flickered across his face, subtle but unmistakable. Sam's heart stuttered, then steadied. She straightened her high-waisted jeans and tugged at her worn cardigan, a protective gesture she'd developed over years of making herself smaller, less noticeable. The simple movement carried the weight of a dozen unspoken memories. "Welcome to Walker's," she said, her voice steady, professional, empty, as if she hadn't once known the exact sound of his laugh at 3 in the morning, hadn't once been the person he turned to when the world grew too heavy. Cassian's hand went to the ring on his finger, a tell she remembered all too well. He twisted it once, twice, before speaking. "Thank you." He chose a booth by the window, where the neon sign cast alternating shadows of red and blue across his sharp features. His linen shirt and tailored pants spoke of success, of a life lived far from fluorescent lights and laminated menus. Sam grabbed a menu and a coffee pot, muscle memory carrying her forward even as her mind screamed to retreat. She set both down with practiced efficiency. "Coffee? Please." He looked up at her, and for a moment, she saw past the polished exterior to something raw underneath. "But it's been a while, Sam." She poured his coffee with steady hands, years of practice preventing even a single drop from spilling. 12 years, give or take. The words came out more clipped than she intended. "The menu's changed since then. We have quinoa bowls now." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Moving up in the world? Some of us move sideways." She capped the coffee pot. "Let me know when you're ready to order." As she walked away, Sam felt his eyes on her back, heavy with unasked questions. She returned to her spot behind the counter, pulling out her notebook again, but the words blurred before her eyes. Through the window's reflection, she watched him pull out his phone, probably checking one of the many emails that came with being a nationally recognized mental health advocate. The irony wasn't lost on her, how the boy she'd once found at his lowest point now spent his life pulling others from their own darkness. The late-night regulars filtered in and out. Truck driver Don with his usual meatloaf. Lucy from the gas station across the street, grabbing coffee before her graveyard shift. Sam moved through their orders with automatic precision, all while avoiding Cassian's booth, except when absolutely necessary. He ordered eventually, black coffee and apple pie, the same thing he used to get when they were younger and the world seemed both bigger and smaller. As she set the plate down, he spoke again. "I'm in town for a while, setting up a mental health program in the local schools." Sam nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "I heard about your project on the news. It's good work. It's necessary work." He paused, and she saw him twist the ring again. "I thought about you when we chose this location." The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Sam's fingers itched to crack, to release some of the tension building in her joints. Instead, she gripped her order pad tighter. "A lot of people need help here," she said finally. "The schools especially." It wasn't what she wanted to say, but it was safer than the truth, that she'd thought about him too. Every time his face appeared on television or in a magazine article, every time someone mentioned the revolutionary approach to mental health care that was sweeping across the country. "Are you still?" he started, then stopped, as if uncertain how to phrase the question. "Studying?" "Yeah. Community college. Psychology." She allowed herself a small, ironic smile. "Part-time. Some of us take the scenic route." His eyes softened with something that wasn't quite pity, but felt dangerously close. The destination matters more than the path, Sam. Sure. She stepped back, needing distance from the warmth in his voice. Anything else you need? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the teenager he'd been, the one who used to write poetry in the margins of his physics homework, the one who'd disappeared without a word 12 years ago, leaving her with nothing but questions and a heart that took too long to heal. No, he said finally. I'm good for now. Sam retreated behind her counter, pulling out her notebook again. But instead of writing, she found herself drawing tiny spirals in the margin, each one tighter than the last, like the way her chest felt whenever she caught Cassian's reflection in the window. The night stretched on, measured in coffee refills and the soft clink of forks against plates. At some point, Cassian left money on the table and stood to leave. He hesitated by the door, hand on the handle. It's good to see you, Sam, he said, quiet enough that she had to strain to hear. Really good. The bell chimed again, and he was gone, leaving behind nothing but the lingering scent of his cologne and the ghost of what might have been. Sam looked down at her notebook, where the spirals had transformed into words. Some people leave footprints on your soul that time never quite washes away. She closed the notebook and cracked her knuckles, finally allowing herself the small release. Outside, the neon sign flickered, casting shadows that danced across the empty booth where Cassian had sat, where memories now sat instead. In 3 hours, her shift would end. She'd drive to her small apartment, try to sleep for a few hours before her morning psychology class. Life would go on, just as it had for the past 12 years. But something had shifted, like a door long closed had been cracked open, letting in a draft of something that felt dangerously like hope. Sam touched the worn cover of her notebook, thinking of all the words she'd never said, all the things she'd written instead. Somewhere in her bedroom drawer, there was still a photo from that time, her and Cassian, young and unbroken, before life had taught them both about the weight of leaving and the cost of staying. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, constant and unchanging, but for the first time in years, their steady hum felt less like resignation and more like the beginning of something new, or perhaps something old, finally ready to be confronted. The community college campus buzzed with mid-morning activity as Samantha hurried across the quad, her psychology textbook clutched to her chest. Sleep had eluded her after her shift, her mind replaying Cassian's appearance like a scene from a movie she couldn't pause. Now, running on 3 hours of rest and too much coffee, she felt raw, exposed, as if his presence had peeled back a layer of protective numbness she'd carefully cultivated over the years. You look like you've seen a ghost, Nevaeh Carter called out, falling into step beside her. Nia's red-tinted dreadlocks caught the autumn sunlight, and her vibrant streetwear, a mix of vintage finds and bold patterns, made Sam's simple jeans and cardigan feel even more muted in comparison. Something like that. Sam dodged a group of freshmen rushing past. Remember those stories I told you about the guy from high school? The one who... Nia's dark eyes widened with recognition. No way. He showed up at Walker's. Sam nodded, pushing open the door to the psychology building. Looking exactly like success is supposed to look, all polished and put together, talking about his mental health program like he's some kind of savior, Nia finished, chewing thoughtfully on her pen cap. I mean, from what I've read about his work, he kind of is. The stuff he's doing with accessible therapy and school programs. It's revolutionary. I know. Sam sank into her usual seat in the back row of their abnormal psychology classroom, Nia settling beside her. That's what makes it worse. He actually did it, Nia. He took his darkness and turned it into something meaningful. And you haven't? Nia pulled the pen from her mouth, pointing it at Sam accusingly. Girl, you're here, aren't you? Fighting for your degree, working yourself to the bone to make it happen. That's not nothing. Before Sam could respond, Professor Henderson walked in, her presence commanding immediate attention. But as the lecture began, something about trauma responses and healing pathways, Sam found her thoughts drifting to another classroom, 12 years ago, where she'd first noticed the shadows in Cassian's eyes. He'd been sitting alone, scribbling in his notebook, but it wasn't physics equations she'd glimpsed when she'd walked past. It was a single line, written over and over, I don't know how to stay. The memory hit her with such force that she had to grip her desk to steady herself. She'd never told anyone about that moment, about how it had prompted her to start leaving little notes in his locker. Anonymous messages of hope, Quotes about resilience. Reminders that the world was better with him in it. She'd never even told him it was her. Ms. Monroe? Professor Henderson's voice cut through her reverie. Would you care to share your thoughts on post-traumatic growth? Sam straightened, grateful for years of customer service training that had taught her to appear present even when her mind was miles away. It's the idea that trauma, while devastating, can lead to positive psychological changes. Some people develop deeper relationships, find new meaning in life, or discover strength they didn't know they had. Exactly. Henderson nodded approvingly. Sometimes our deepest wounds become the foundation for our greatest transformations. The irony of the statement wasn't lost on Sam. Wasn't that exactly what Cassian had done? Turned his own battle with mental health into a mission to help others? Meanwhile, she was still here, still writing her thoughts in notebooks because speaking them aloud felt too much like tempting fate. After class, Nia caught her arm before she could rush off to her shift at Walker's. Come to the Bean first. I've got something for you. The Bean was the local coffee shop where Nia worked, a cozy space that smelled of espresso and possibility. Unlike the fluorescent harshness of Walker's, the Bean was all warm lighting and exposed brick, with local art on the walls and a small stage where amateur musicians performed on weekends. I have to be at work in an hour, Sam protested, but Nia was already pulling her through the door. Trust me, you need this more than sleep. Nia slipped behind the counter, her movements fluid as she began crafting something in one of the Bean's signature oversized mugs. I made a new playlist last night. Couldn't stop thinking about what you told me about him years ago. Sam leaned against the counter, watching as Nia topped whatever she was making with a precise pattern in the foam. You and your playlists? Still trying to soundtrack everyone's life? Music speaks when words fail. Nia slid the mug across the counter. On its surface, she'd crafted a perfect broken heart in latte art. The pieces almost, but not quite touching. Unlike this conversation you're not having with yourself about why his reappearance has you so shaken. I'm not shaken. But even as she said it, Sam's fingers found each other, cracking her knuckles in betrayal. Honey, you're practically vibrating. Nia pulled out her phone, scrolling through her music library. Here, I called it, When Past Catches Up with Present. She pressed play, and soft indie notes filled the space between them. Sam took a sip of her drink, a lavender honey latte, her favorite that she never ordered for herself, and let the music wash over her. The lyrics spoke of time as a circle, of moments that echo years after they've passed. He said he thought about me when they chose this location, she admitted quietly. For his program. Of course he did. Nia's voice was gentle. You were there at his lowest. That kind of thing leaves a mark. But I wasn't. Not really. Sam stared into her mug, watching the broken heart slowly dissolve into the foam. I just saw him, wrote him some notes. Anyone could have done that. But anyone didn't. You did. Nia started wiping down the already clean counter, a habit Sam recognized as her friend's way of processing emotions. And now he's back, doing exactly what you dream of doing, helping people heal. No wonder you're spooked. The bell above the door chimed, and Sam's heart jumped before she realized it was just a regular customer. But the reaction itself told her more than she wanted to know about her emotional state. I should go, she said, pushing away from the counter. Can't be late for my exciting evening of serving pie and avoiding eye contact with memories. Sam, Nia's voice stopped her. The playlist. Listen to it, okay? Sometimes other people's words help us find our own. Sam nodded, already halfway to the door, but she paused with her hand on the handle, looking back at her friend. Hey, Nia, thanks for seeing me. Always. Nia was already chewing on her pen cap again, probably composing another playlist in her head. That's what we do for the people we love, right? We see them, even when they're trying to hide. The autumn air hit Sam's face as she stepped outside, carrying with it the scent of falling leaves and change. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a news alert about Cassian's program launching in the local school district next week. The headline called him a mental health revolutionary and featured a photo of him speaking at a conference, his gray-green eyes intense with purpose. She clicked the notification away, but not before catching a quote from his speech. Healing isn't linear. Sometimes we have to circle back to move forward. As she walked to her car, Nia's playlist still playing in her earbuds, Sam pulled out her notebook and wrote, Maybe the hardest part isn't the breaking or the healing. Maybe it's realizing that some breaks reshape us into something stronger. while others leave us afraid to take any shape at all. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot, and somewhere in the distance, a bell was ringing, signaling the end of something and the beginning of something else. Sam got into her car, the notebook safe in her bag, and headed toward Walker's, where fluorescent lights and memory waited. She didn't delete the news alert about Cassian's program. Some part of her knew she'd read it later, in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, searching for echoes of the boy she'd known and the man he'd become. For now, though, she let Nia's music fill her car, each song a different way of saying what she couldn't, that sometimes the past doesn't just catch up with the present, it demands to be confronted, processed, transformed. Just like the broken heart in her latte's foam, some patterns don't disappear when they dissolve. They just become part of something new. The school auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Samantha sat in the back row, her psychology textbook open on her lap, more as a shield than for studying. She hadn't planned to come to Cassian's program launch, but Professor Henderson had announced it would count as extra credit for their therapeutic approaches class. Now, watching the seats fill with teachers, parents, and mental health professionals, she felt increasingly like a fish out of water. "Stop fidgeting," Nia whispered beside her, taking a break from her own note-taking. "You look like you're planning an escape route." "Maybe I am." Sam's fingers found their way to her knuckles, but Nia caught her hand before she could crack them. The lights dimmed, and Cassian walked onto the stage. The casual elegance she remembered from the diner had been replaced by a more formal look. Charcoal suit, light blue shirt, no tie, professional but approachable. He moved with the confidence of someone used to commanding attention, but Sam caught the subtle tell of his hand brushing his grandfather's ring as he reached the podium. "Mental health isn't just about crisis intervention," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "It's about creating environments where crisis becomes less likely, where asking for help isn't seen as weakness, but as wisdom." Sam found herself leaning forward despite her resistance. Cassian spoke with the authority of someone who had walked through fire and emerged with purpose. He shared statistics, outlined program structures, but it was when he moved away from the podium that the energy in the room shifted. "I was 17 when I almost became a statistic myself," he said, and Sam's breath caught. She'd never heard him speak about this publicly. "I had everything society said should make me happy: good grades, athletic ability, a future mapped out. But inside, I was drowning." The audience was silent, captivated. Sam's notebook lay forgotten in her lap as Cassian continued. "What saved me wasn't a grand intervention. It was small acts of kindness, anonymous notes that appeared in my locker, reminding me that someone, even if I didn't know who, saw me, cared enough to reach out." Sam's heart thundered in her chest. Beside her, Nia shot her a sharp look. "Those notes became my lifeline. They showed me that connection doesn't always need a face or a name. Sometimes, healing starts with knowing you're not invisible." After the presentation, as people filed out discussing implementation strategies and budget allocations, Sam remained frozen in her seat. Nia touched her arm gently. "You never told me they were anonymous," she said softly. "The notes you left him. It didn't seem important." Sam gathered her things, movements mechanical. It was a lifetime ago. "Sam, I have to get to work." But as she stood to leave, a familiar voice cut through the emptying auditorium. "Samantha?" Cassian was walking toward them, his public speaker persona softening into something more uncertain. Up close, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his confidence wavered slightly. "Professor Henderson mentioned you'd be here," he said. "I was hoping we could talk." Nia stepped forward, smoothly inserting herself into the conversation. "Hi, I'm Nevia Carter, Sam's best friend and unofficial life manager. Your presentation was incredible." "Thank you," Cassian smiled, but his eyes kept drifting back to Sam. "I'm actually heading to Walker's later. Maybe." "She's working until close," Nia supplied, ignoring Sam's warning look. "But she gets a break around 8. The betrayal was so smooth, Sam almost admired it. Almost. 8, then?" Cassian asked, and there was a hint of the teenage boy in his uncertainty. Sam nodded, not trusting her voice. As they left the auditorium, Nia humming softly beside her, she felt the weight of unspoken words pressing against her chest. The evening rush at Walker's passed in a blur of coffee refills and burger orders. At 7:55, Sam found herself in the break room, staring at her reflection in the scratched mirror. She looked tired, the fluorescent lights harsh against her skin, but there was something else in her eyes, a spark of the girl who once believed in the power of anonymous kindness. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nia. "Remember, you're not the same person you were at 17. Neither is he. That's okay." At 8 sharp, Cassian walked in. He'd changed into more casual clothes, a soft gray Henley and dark jeans, but his presence still commanded attention. He chose the same booth as before, by the window where the neon signs painted him in alternating light and shadow. Sam approached with coffee and her notebook clutched like armor. "You're making a habit of this. Old habits die hard." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Join me." She slid into the booth, hyper-aware of Don the truck driver's curious glance from the counter. "Your presentation was good, but..." "No but." She traced the worn edge of her notebook. "You're doing important work." Cassian's eyes fixed on her fingers, following their nervous movement. "Those notes," he said quietly. "They weren't just random acts of kindness, were they?" Sam's hand stilled. In her notebook, hidden beneath the table, she'd written dozens of variations of this moment over the years. None of them had prepared her for the reality. "I saw your notebook one day in physics," she said finally. "What you'd written about not knowing how to stay." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something deeper. "You never said anything. You needed someone to see you." She shrugged. "Not someone to fix you, Sam." He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "Those notes, they became my North Star. When everything was dark, they reminded me that darkness isn't permanent. And now you're helping others find their light." The words came out more bitter than she intended. "While you're still writing in notebooks." His observation was gentle, but it hit like a punch. "Still helping from the shadows. Some of us are better in the background. Are you?" He leaned forward. "Or is that just what you tell yourself because it's safer?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Sam's break timer chose that moment to buzz, making them both jump. "I have to get back," she said, sliding out of the booth. But Cassian caught her wrist, his touch light but electric. "Come to the program workshop tomorrow," he said, not as a student or an observer, as someone who understands the power of reaching out. Sam looked down at where his fingers met her skin, at the space where past and present collided. "I'll think about it." The rest of her shift passed in a haze of muscle memory and overthinking. After closing, as she wiped down tables and stacked chairs, she found herself at his booth again. The neon lights still played their color symphony, but now they illuminated her notebook as she wrote. "We spend so much time trying to outrun our younger selves, forgetting that they might have known something we've forgotten. Like how sometimes the bravest thing isn't grand gestures or public speeches. Sometimes it's a note slipped through a locker vent, carrying hope like a paper boat on uncertain waters." She looked up to find Nia outside, waiting in her beat-up Volkswagen for their traditional post-shift drive. Her friend had started the ritual after Sam's first panic attack at work, understanding that sometimes the hardest part of the day was the quiet drive home with only thoughts for company. As Sam slid into the passenger seat, Nia started playing a new playlist. The soft indie music wrapped around them like a blanket as they drove through the sleeping town. "You know what's funny?" Nia said, breaking their comfortable silence. "He's built this whole career on the power of connection, of speaking up, but it started with someone caring enough to stay quiet, to help without needing credit." Sam watched the streetlights blur past. Maybe that's why he came back, not just for the program. Maybe. Nia turned onto Sam's street. Or maybe some stories don't end just because we close the book. That night, Sam dreamed of paper boats carrying messages across an endless sea, each one glowing with its own light. When she woke, she found herself reaching for her phone, scrolling to the program workshop details Cassian had mentioned. Sometimes moving forward meant walking back through doors you thought you'd closed forever. Sometimes healing meant letting yourself be seen, not just by others, but by the person you used to be, the one who knew that hope could fit on a small piece of paper, folded carefully and given away like a secret prayer. The workshop space in the local community center felt too bright, too exposed. Samantha stood in the doorway, watching volunteers arrange chairs in a circle while Cassian talked with a small group of counselors near the window. She'd changed her outfit 3 times before settling on a soft blue sweater and dark jeans, an attempt to look put together without looking like she was trying to look put together. "You actually came." Cassian's voice startled her. He'd broken away from his group and now stood beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that made her own drugstore perfume feel suddenly inadequate. Anya threatened to play breakup songs at full volume during my entire shift if I didn't. The lie came easily, safer than admitting she'd spent hours convincing herself to come. His lips quirked. Remind me to thank her. He gestured to the circle of chairs. We're starting in 10 minutes. No pressure to speak, but you hope I will. She finished for him, recognizing the gentle push in his tone. I hope you'll be yourself. He touched his ring briefly. Whatever that means today. Before she could respond, a teenage girl approached Cassian, clutching a folder to her chest. Mr. Rowe, I'm Melody. I'm supposed to share my story today, but I don't think I can. The transformation in Cassian was immediate and subtle. His posture softened, his attention fully focused on Melody, as if she were the only person in the room. Want to take a walk? Sometimes moving makes talking easier. As they headed toward the hallway, Cassian glanced back at Sam. Something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, of how roles change, of how sometimes the helpers need helping too. Sam found a seat near the back of the circle, pulling out her notebook more from habit than intent. People filtered in. Teachers, students, parents, each carrying their own invisible weights. A woman about Sam's age sat down beside her, her hands constantly moving, twisting a silver bracelet around her wrist. First time? The woman asked, offering a small smile. Sam nodded. That obvious? You have the same look I had last week, like you're planning escape routes. She extended her hand. I'm Lauren. Sam. They shook hands briefly. Did it help? Last week? Lauren's fingers stilled on her bracelet. I spoke about my brother, about finding him after his attempt. Her voice caught. It was hard, but afterward, 3 people came up to me, said hearing my story made them feel less alone. Before Sam could respond, Cassian returned with Melody. The girl's eyes were red but determined as she took a seat across the circle. Cassian remained standing, his presence drawing the room's scattered energy into focus. Welcome, everyone. Today isn't about solutions or fixes. It's about voices, hearing them, sharing them, understanding that every story matters, even the ones we think are too small or too broken to tell. Sam's fingers tightened around her pen as Cassian's eyes swept the circle, lingering briefly on her. She watched as people began to share, a teacher describing her struggle to identify students in crisis, a father crying as he talked about his daughter's depression, Melody bravely reading a poem about anxiety that made Sam's heart ache with recognition. Sometimes, Melody read, her voice growing stronger, I feel like a library where all the books are in the wrong order. Everything I need is there, but I can't find it when it matters. Sam found herself writing in her notebook. We're all misplaced books, aren't we? Carrying stories we don't know how to tell, wisdom we can't access when we need it most. Would anyone else like to share? Cassian's question pulled her from her thoughts. The room had shifted, heavy with shared vulnerability. Lauren raised her hand, then spoke about grief, about how losing someone to suicide leaves questions that echo forever. As she talked, her bracelet twisting became more pronounced, and without thinking, Sam reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. Lauren squeezed back, gratitude in the gesture. When Lauren finished, Cassian looked at Sam, a question in his eyes. She felt the weight of her notebook, of all the words she'd hidden there. Slowly, she stood. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat and started again. I used to leave anonymous notes for someone who was struggling. Just small things. Quotes, encouragement, reminders to stay. I never told them it was me. Never knew if it really helped. She glanced at Cassian, on whose face remained carefully neutral. But I learned something from that time. Sometimes hope doesn't need a name. Sometimes just knowing someone sees you, even from a distance, is enough to keep you holding on. The room was quiet when she sat down. Then Melody spoke up. Did the person ever find out it was you? Sam met Cassian's eyes across the circle. They did, eventually. After the session, people lingered, talking in small groups, exchanging numbers and stories. Sam was gathering her things when Lauren touched her arm. Thank you, Lauren said, for what you said about hope not needing a name. My brother, before he died, he used to leave little drawings around the house. Birds, mostly. I never told him I knew it was him. Never got the chance to thank him for trying to bring beauty into our lives, even when he couldn't feel it himself. Sam hugged her impulsively, understanding the weight of unspoken gratitude. When Lauren left, Cassian approached, his professional demeanor softening at the edges. "You did good," he said quietly. "I didn't say much. You said exactly what someone needed to hear." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. "Listen, I'm doing a smaller session tomorrow at the Bean. More informal, focused on creative expression and healing. Would you come? Maybe bring some of your writing?" The invitation hung between them like a bridge neither was sure would hold weight. Sam thought of her notebook, of all the words she'd never shared, of how speaking today had felt like opening a window in a room long sealed shut. "I'll think about it," she said, but they both heard the yes hiding beneath her hesitation. Outside, the autumn afternoon was fading into evening. Sam walked to her car, her notebook pressed against her chest like a shield or maybe a treasure. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nia. "Proud of you, whatever you chose to do today." She started her car but didn't drive away immediately. Instead, she opened her notebook one last time. Maybe courage isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Maybe it's about letting your voice shake and speaking anyway. About admitting that sometimes the person you were trying to save by staying silent was yourself. The community center's lights were still on, spilling warm rectangles onto the parking lot. Through the windows, she could see Cassian talking with the last few participants, his hands moving expressively as he spoke. He looked solid, present, real in a way that made her own reality feel suddenly uncertain. Tomorrow at the Bean, another choice, another chance to either hide or heal. Sam put her car in drive, but as she pulled away, she caught a glimpse of Cassian in her rearview mirror, watching her leave. This time, though, it didn't feel like an ending. Sometimes, she was learning. The bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen, not just your strength but your trembling, not just your wisdom but your wounds, not just who you've become, but who you were when you first learned how to help someone else carry their darkness. The evening air carried the scent of possibility as she drove home. Nia's latest playlist, titled Songs for Speaking Up, filling her car with melodies that felt like permission to hope. The Bean looked different after hours, with the main lights dimmed and scattered table lamps creating pools of warm light. The coffee shop felt like a secret space between day and night. Nia moved behind the counter, preparing drinks for the small group gathered for Cassian's creative expression session. Her red dreadlocks caught in the amber glow of pendant lights. Sam sat in a worn leather armchair, her notebook open, but untouched. Melody from yesterday's workshop was there, sitting cross-legged on a floor cushion, along with Lauren and a few others she recognized from the community center. Cassian stood by the small stage area, arranging journals and art supplies on a table. "Before we start," Nia announced, carrying a tray of steaming mugs, "I made everyone something special. Each drink is different, like our stories." She began distributing them, explaining each one. Lavender honey latte for Sam, because sometimes sweetness needs to be discovered slowly. Spice chai for Melody, complex and warming. When she reached Cassian, she handed him a dark roast with a design in the foam. "Simple but deep," she said with a meaningful look at Sam. "Some things don't need embellishment to be profound." "The theme tonight is words we never said," Cassian began once everyone had settled. His gray-green eyes caught the lamplight as he spoke. "Sometimes the hardest truths get stuck in our throats, in our journals, in the spaces between heartbeats. Tonight is about giving those words room to breathe." He pulled an old envelope from his pocket. "I'll start. This is something I wrote 12 years ago but never sent." His fingers brushed his ring as he unfolded the paper. "Dear anonymous friend." Sam's heart stopped. She felt Nia's hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Your notes have become my calendar," Cassian read. "I measure time by them now, the days you write, the days you don't. Yesterday's said, 'The darkness lies about how long it will last.' I've read it so many times the paper's wearing thin. I want to tell you that your words are like lights in a city I thought was abandoned. That sometimes I imagine I know who you are. And in every version, you're someone who understands darkness but chooses to carry light anyway." His voice caught slightly. He looked up, meeting Sam's eyes across the room. "I never sent this because I was afraid of breaking the spell, of finding out the person behind the notes couldn't bear the weight of my gratitude. I didn't understand then that sometimes the people who help us carry our darkness are the ones most familiar with its weight." Silence filled the room like water, deep and clear. Then Melody opened her notebook and began to read a letter to her anxiety, personifying it as an overprotective friend who had forgotten how to trust Joy. Lauren shared a conversation she wished she'd had with her brother, her silver bracelet catching the light as she spoke. Sam's fingers trembled over her notebook. Nia squeezed her shoulder again, then moved to the small sound system, starting a soft instrumental playlist she'd crafted specifically for the night. The music wrapped around them like a gentle current, carrying words too heavy to float on silence alone. Finally, Sam stood. Her voice was quiet, but steady as she read, "Dear self at 17, you think you're hiding, don't you? Slipping those notes into his locker before dawn, crafting hope like origami, delicate but precise. You think if you fold yourself small enough, no one will see how much you're breaking too. But I see you. I see how you press your own pain into paper planes and launch them towards someone else's darkness, hoping they'll fly back transformed into something lighter than grief. I want to tell you that it matters. Not just the notes, but the girl writing them. That one day, the boy you're trying to save will stand in front of you, successful and whole, and your heart will crack in new places because you never learned how to take credit for the light you gave away. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some gifts aren't meant to be claimed. Maybe sometimes love looks like anonymous notes and silence, and the courage to help someone else believe in tomorrow when you're not quite sure about today. You're braver than you know, 17-year-old me. And one day, you'll learn that the light you kept giving away has been inside you all along. When she finished, the room was so quiet, she could hear the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. Then Cassian stood, moving toward her with purpose. He stopped just short of touching her, his presence both familiar and foreign. "I kept them all," he said softly. "Every note. They're in a box in my office. Sometimes, when things get hard, I still read them." "Why?" The question escaped before she could catch it. "Because they remind me that hope doesn't have to be loud to be powerful." He smiled, a gentle thing that made her chest ache. That sometimes the quietest acts of kindness echo the longest. Nia changed the music then, a song with lyrics about time being a circle, about how some stories spiral back to their beginning to find new endings. The others in the room had broken into small conversations, sharing their own unspoken words, but Sam and Cassian remained in their pocket of charged silence. "I have a confession," he said finally. "I did know it was you. Not at first, but I recognized your handwriting on a physics assignment. I didn't say anything because I was afraid you'd stop if you knew I knew." Sam's fingers found her knuckles, but this time, she didn't crack them. Instead, she opened her notebook to a blank page and wrote a single line. "Some silences are prayers, others are prisons. The trick is learning which ones need to be broken." She showed it to him, watching as understanding dawned in his eyes. He took the pen from her hand, their fingers brushing, and wrote beneath her words, "Then let's break them together." The evening continued, stories flowing like the coffee Nia kept brewing, each person's truth making space for another's. But something had shifted between Sam and Cassian. A door long locked had not just been opened, but removed entirely. Later, as they helped Nia clean up, Sam found herself humming along to the playlist. Cassian was boxing up the art supplies, his movements precise but relaxed. The night felt both ending and beginning, like a book being closed only to be opened again from a new angle. "You know," Nia said as she wiped down the counter, "some people spend their whole lives looking for grand gestures of love, but sometimes it's in the small things. A note slipped into a locker, a coffee made exactly right, a silence finally broken." She looked between them meaningfully. "Sometimes healing looks like letting yourself be known, not just for what you give, but for what you need too." Sam touched the worn cover of her notebook, thinking of all the words still waiting to be spoken. Outside, the autumn night pressed against the windows, but inside the bean, surrounded by scattered papers bearing newly freed truths and the lingering warmth of shared stories, she felt something long dormant beginning to unfurl. It felt like hope. It felt like courage. It felt, finally, like coming home to herself. Morning light filtered through the windows of Walker's diner, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Sam wiped down tables with mechanical precision, her mind still spinning from the previous night's revelations at the bean. She'd barely slept, spending hours instead reading through her old notebooks, finding echoes of the girl who once believed anonymous kindness could save someone. The bell above the door chimed. Sam looked up to see Lauren, silver bracelet catching the sunlight as she slipped into a booth. "I hoped you'd be working," Lauren said when Sam approached with coffee. "After last night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what you said about giving light away." Sam poured the coffee, noting how Lauren's hands trembled slightly around the mug. "Rough night. Found more of my brother's drawings while cleaning out Mom's attic. Birds everywhere, margins of his notebooks, backs of receipts, even on the walls behind his posters." Lauren's voice cracked. He was trying so hard to leave beauty behind, and we never saw it until... The door chimed again. Cassian walked in, wearing running clothes, his hair damp with sweat. He stopped short when he saw them, clearly not expecting company at this early hour. "I can come back," he said, but Sam shook her head. "Sit. Coffee's fresh." She gestured to Lauren's booth. "If that's okay." Lauren nodded, and Cassian slid in across from her. Sam brought another mug, trying to ignore how domestic this felt, serving coffee to the man who'd kept her anonymous notes for 12 years, sitting with a woman who understood too well the weight of unspoken words. "I was just telling Sam about my brother's drawings," Lauren said, pulling a folded paper from her purse. "I found this one this morning." She smoothed it out on the table. A small bird, drawn in blue ink, perched on what looked like a broken window. But looking closer, Sam realized the cracks in the glass formed words. "Some breaks let the light in." Cassian studied the drawing, his expression softening. He was reaching out in his own way. "Like Sam's notes to you." Lauren looked between them, in different languages of hope. Sam's fingers found her knuckles, but before she could crack them, Cassian caught her hand. His touch was light but deliberate, thumb brushing over her knuckles once before letting go. "I have a proposition for both of you," he said. "The program's expanding. We're creating a creative expression branch. Art therapy, writing workshops, music sessions. We need people who understand that healing isn't just about talking. It's about finding different languages for pain and hope." Lauren's bracelet stilled. "You want us to help? I want you to lead." Cassian's eyes met Sam's. "Lauren, your brother's art shows how powerful visual expression can be. And Sam," he paused, "those notes you wrote, they weren't just words. They were lifelines disguised as paper." The morning light seemed to hold its breath. Sam thought of her psychology classes, of her dream to help others, of all the words still hiding in her notebooks. "I'm not qualified," she started, but Lauren cut her off. "Neither was my brother when he started drawing birds. Neither were you when you wrote those notes. Sometimes the best qualification is understanding the darkness you're helping others navigate." The door chimed again. Nia walked in, carrying her DJ equipment from a late-night gig. She took in the scene, Sam standing tensely by the booth, Cassian and Lauren looking up expectantly. "Whatever's happening," Nia said, sliding into the booth next to Lauren. "I'm in." "Cassian's offering us jobs," Sam said, the words feeling strange on her tongue. "In creative expression therapy," Lauren added. Nia's eyes lit up. "Perfect. I've been developing music therapy playlists for months. Different tempos for different emotional states, progressions that mirror healing patterns. See?" Cassian smiled. "We're already a team." Sam looked at them, Lauren with her brother's drawing, Nia practically vibrating with ideas, Cassian watching her with those gray-green eyes that still held echoes of the boy she'd tried to save. For a moment, she was 17 again, carefully folding notes into paper planes of hope. "I have conditions," she said finally. "Name them." Cassian leaned forward. "I keep my shifts here until I finish my degree. No public speaking. And," she took a deep breath, "I want to see them. The notes you kept." The air between them crackled with unspoken implications. Cassian nodded slowly. "Come to my office after your shift." They're all there. The morning crowd started filtering in, breaking their bubble of possibility. As Sam moved to attend to other customers, she felt the weight of what had just happened settling on her shoulders. Not like a burden, but like wings unfurling. During a quiet moment, she pulled out her notebook. Maybe we're all just creating lifelines in different languages. Notes, drawings, music, touch. Maybe healing isn't about finding the right words, but about finding the right way to reach across the darkness and say, "I see you. I've been there. Hold on." The day passed in a blur of coffee refills and half-formed plans. Lauren stayed, sketching birds on napkins that she left for other customers. Nia set up her laptop at the counter, working on playlists between helping Sam serve the lunch rush. And Cassian kept finding reasons to return, For more coffee, for lunch, for brief conversations that felt like pieces of a larger story finally being told. By the time her shift ended, Sam's notebook had several new entries. Some returns are circles closing, some are spirals opening, some are both. She changed out of her work uniform into the spare clothes she kept in her locker, jeans and a soft green sweater that Nia had insisted brought out the warmth in her eyes. In the scratched mirror of the break room, she looked at herself, not the 17-year-old who wrote anonymous notes, not the waitress hiding behind her notebook, but someone in between, someone becoming. Outside, the autumn afternoon was turning golden. Cassian waited by his car, keys hanging loose in his fingers. He'd changed too, back into his usual elegant casual wear, but something about him seemed softer, more accessible. "Ready?" he asked as she approached. Sam thought of the box of notes waiting in his office, of all the words they'd written and left unspoken, of how some stories need to spiral back to their beginning before they can find their way forward. "Ready?" she said, and for the first time in years, she meant it. Cassian's office occupied the corner suite of a renovated brownstone downtown. Large windows filled the space with late afternoon light, warming the exposed brick walls and illuminating shelves lined with psychology books and framed credentials. But what caught Sam's attention was the wooden box sitting centered on his desk, handcrafted maple, worn smooth with age. "My grandfather's," Cassian explained, touching the ring on his finger. "He used to keep old letters in it. Seemed fitting to give your notes the same home." Sam approached the desk slowly, aware of Cassian closing the door behind them, of the intimate tension filling the room. The box looked both smaller and larger than she'd imagined, too small to hold 12 years of impact, too large for the teenage girl she'd been to fill. "May I?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Cassian nodded, moving to stand beside her. "They're in chronological order. I used to organize them when things got overwhelming. Found peace in the routine of it." With trembling fingers, Sam lifted the lid. The notes lay inside, carefully preserved, each one protected in a clear sleeve. She recognized her younger self in the handwriting, the way she'd curved her Y's, how she'd dotted her I's with tiny circles when she was feeling hopeful. The first one read, "The darkness lies about how long it will last. Dawn always comes even when we can't see it approaching." "This was the first," Cassian said softly, "the day after I saw you reading my physics notebook." Sam picked up another. "Your existence is not a burden. The world is more beautiful because you're in it, even on days when you can't feel your own light." "I remember writing this one," she said, voice thick. "You'd missed 3 days of school. When you came back, you looked so hollow. I'd tried to—" He stopped, swallowed. "That was the closest I came. But then I found this note, and something shifted, like someone had thrown me a rope in the dark." Sam's fingers found the next sleeve. "Some hearts are lighthouses. They break themselves open to show others the way home." "You know what's strange?" Cassian moved closer, his arm brushing hers as he reached for one of the notes. "I used to imagine what you were doing when you wrote them. If you were struggling too, if helping me was your way of helping yourself. Maybe it was." Sam touched one of the clear sleeves, remembering the girl who'd written the words inside. "After being kicked out, I felt so powerless. Writing these, knowing they might make a difference, it gave me back some control." "Tell me about that day," Cassian said quietly. "When they kicked you out." "You never have." Sam's fingers stilled on the notes. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the room in shades of amber and shadow. "I came out to them. My parents, they were traditional, religious. They gave me an hour to pack." Cassian's breath caught. Without speaking, he pulled another note from the box. "Your truth is not a sin. It's a constellation. Every point of light exactly where it needs to be." "I wrote that one for myself," Sam admitted. "Left a copy in my own locker that morning. Didn't know if I believed it, but sometimes we write what we need to hear." He completed her thought, then reached into his desk drawer. "Like this." He handed her a worn piece of paper, unprotected by plastic. Sam unfolded it carefully, recognizing his teenage handwriting. "Dear Anonymous Angel, today you wrote about constellations and truth. I wonder if you know you're a constellation too. Points of light scattered across my darkest moments, forming patterns I'm only beginning to understand. I wonder if you're broken like me, if you're healing like me, if you're afraid like me. I wonder if you know you're saving me, one note at a time. I saw you today in the hallway. You didn't see me, or maybe you did, and that's why you looked away. But for a moment, when you passed by, I felt less alone. Maybe that's what salvation is, not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but small moments of being seen, of knowing someone else is watching for your light. I'll never send this letter, but I'll keep your notes. And maybe someday, when we're both less broken, I'll find the courage to thank you properly. Until then, I'll keep looking for your handwriting, for those tiny circles above your eyes that feel like stars guiding me home. Sam's knees weakened. She sank into one of the office chairs, the letter trembling in her hands. You knew, even then, you knew it was me. I hoped. Cassian knelt beside her chair. But hope was dangerous back then, for both of us, I think. I was so careful. She traced the words on the page. Always came early. Checked the hallways. You wore a blue sweater, he said softly. The day I wrote this, you were reading by the window in the library, and the light caught your hair, and I remember thinking you looked like how your notes felt. Quiet, but bright. Gentle, but strong. Sam closed her eyes, memories washing over her. I used to watch you, too. Never when you could see me. Just making sure you were still there, still fighting. We were both guardian angels in hiding. His hand found hers, warm and solid. Both broken, both trying to heal through helping. And now look at us. Sam gestured to the office. The credentials, the life he'd built. You're actually helping people. Really helping them. Not just leaving notes and hoping. Because of you. His grip tightened. Everything I've built, this program, this mission, it started with those notes. With learning that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can save someone's entire world. Sam opened her eyes to find him watching her, his gray-green gaze intense with something that looked like revelation. Outside, the city was coming alive with evening lights, each one a tiny constellation against the darkening sky. Dance with me, he said suddenly. What? He was already pulling out his phone, connecting it to a small speaker on his bookshelf. Soft music filled the office, the same song that had been playing at the Bean during their revelation. Nea sent me her playlist, he explained, holding out his hand. Said something about timing and circles closing. Sam looked at his offered hand, at the box of notes that had brought them here, at the letter that proved he'd seen her all along. Slowly, she stood. I'm still broken, she whispered as his arms came around her. So am I. He pulled her closer, swaying gently to the music. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we're like those constellations you wrote about, broken light making beautiful patterns. They danced in the fading daylight, surrounded by paper memories and unspoken words finally finding voice. Sam rested her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. Later, she would write in her notebook, some breaks never fully heal. They become doors instead, ways for light to enter, for truth to escape, for love to find its way through walls we built to protect ourselves. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fixing what's broken, but learning to dance in the space between broken and becoming. But for now, she just danced, letting herself be held by the boy she'd tried to save, who had somehow saved her right back. Outside, stars were beginning to appear, each one a tiny circle of light, like the dots she used to place above her eyes, like promises finally being kept. Something had shifted since the dance in Cassian's office. Sam felt it in the air at Walker's, in the way customers noticed her brightened demeanor, in how her notebook entries had started to feel less like hiding places and more like bridges to somewhere new. But with light came shadows, and on this particular morning, those shadows took the form of a glossy magazine left on the counter by a customer. Cassian's face stared up at her from the cover, alongside the headline, Mental Health Revolutionary Cassian Rowe opens up about personal struggles and the anonymous guardian who saved him. Sam's hands shook as she read the interview during her break. Most of it was familiar, his program's success, the importance of accessible mental health care. But then, the notes that saved me weren't just words on paper, he was quoted saying. They were proof that someone saw past my carefully constructed facade. Now years later, I've reconnected with the person who wrote them. She's still saving people, though she might not realize it. And maybe that's the next chapter of our story. The magazine slipped from her fingers as the bell above the door chimed. Nia rushed in, her red dreadlocks wind-blown, clutching her phone. Have you seen? She stopped, spotting the magazine. Ah, you have. Did you know about this interview? No. But, Naya chewed her pen cap nervously. That's not all. Local news picked it up. They're trying to identify the anonymous guardian. Someone from high school remembered you used to stay late, saw you near his locker once. Sam's knuckles cracked without her conscious decision. How many people? It's trending locally. The whole mysterious notes angle, the reunion. People love that kind of story. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too harsh, the diner too exposed. Sam grabbed her notebook, scribbling frantically. Some truths are gardens, meant to grow in the open. Others are secret caves, sacred spaces that lose their power when mapped. The bell chimed again. Cassian walked in, his usual confidence faltering when he saw their expressions. Sam, when? Her voice was quiet but sharp. When did you do the interview? Last week. It wasn't supposed to run yet. He ran a hand through his hair. I was going to tell you, like you told me you knew it was me back then. The words escaped before she could catch them. Or like you told me you were leaving town 12 years ago. The diner fell silent. Other customers pretending not to listen. Naya touched Sam's arm gently. Take your break. Full hour. I'll cover. Outside, the autumn air bit at Sam's cheeks as she walked, Cassian following. They ended up at the small park across the street, empty this early on a weekday. I was trying to protect you, Cassian said finally. Keep your privacy. By telling our story to a national magazine, Sam laughed, but there was no humor in it. You know what this means, right? Everyone will know. My parents will know. Understanding dawned in his eyes. They still live here, 3 blocks from Walker's. Sam sank onto a bench. I've spent 12 years avoiding their church, their social circles, their judgment. Now, she pulled out her phone, showing him the local news notifications already popping up. Cassian sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. I'll fix this. Make a statement. You can't fix everything, Cassian. She turned to face him. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You're still trying to save people, still trying to prove you deserve to be here. That's not. You built your whole life around helping others heal, your program, your speeches, even. She gestured between them. This, us. Is that what I am to you? Another project? Another story of redemption? Sam, no. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. What we have is real. Is it? Or is it just unfinished business? The broken girl who saved you with notes, now conveniently fitting into your narrative of healing and hope. The morning sun cast their shadows long across the grass. In the distance, someone was walking their dog. The animal's joy at simply being alive, a stark contrast to the heavy air between them. You're right, Cassian said quietly, about me still trying to prove something. But you're wrong about why I came back, about what you mean to me. Am I? Sam stood, needing movement. Because from where I stand, you've turned our private pain into public inspiration. Again. She pulled her notebook from her pocket. Remember what I wrote in here? About some breaks letting the light in? Well, some breaks just break, Cassian. They don't all become beautiful metaphors or teaching moments. He touched his ring, a nervous tell she now understood too well. The interview was a mistake. I see that now. But don't punish us both for my need to help others understand. Understand what? That broken people can be fixed. That every dark story has a happy ending. She hugged her notebook to her chest. You're living proof of that, aren't you? The successful psychiatrist who turned his trauma into triumph. But some of us are still in the middle of our stories, still figuring out how to exist in spaces that once rejected us. A notification buzzed on her phone. A text from Lauren. News is spreading. You okay? Need backup. I have to go. Sam stepped back. I have classes, then work, then life. My very small, very private life that's about to become everyone's inspiration porn. Let me help. Cassian stood. We can control the narrative. That's the problem. She met his eyes, seeing both the man he'd become and the boy she'd tried to save. You're still writing the story, Cassian. Still trying to shape everything into neat chapters of healing and growth. But some stories need to stay messy. Some breaks need to stay broken. She turned to leave and then paused. You know what I never wrote in those notes? How terrified I was. Not just of being discovered, but of the responsibility, of knowing someone's life might depend on finding the right words at the right time. She smiled sadly. Guess some things don't change. The walk back to Walker's felt longer than usual. Sam's phone kept buzzing with notifications, but she ignored them all except one from Nia. Whatever you need. I'm here, and I make a mean getaway latte. In her notebook, she wrote, "Some people become lighthouses because they know the dark too well. Others become lighthouses because they're still afraid of drowning. The trick is figuring out which one you are before you trust the light you're following." The diner's neon signs were pale in the morning sun when she returned. Through the window, she could see Nia fielding curious questions from regulars who'd read the news. Life wouldn't be the same after today. The careful boundaries she'd built, the quiet space she'd carved for herself, all of it wobbling on the fault line of exposure. But maybe that was the real lesson here. Not all breaks are beautiful. Not all healing follows a script. And sometimes, the bravest thing isn't letting your light shine, but admitting that you're still learning how to hold it. 3 days had passed since the magazine article, and Sam's world had shrunk to safe spaces. Walker's back office, the Bean after closing, her apartment with its drawn curtains. Her phone lay silent, airplane mode becoming her new normal. But secrets, like light, had a way of finding cracks to seep through. She was wiping down tables during the pre-dawn quiet when the bell chimed. Her mother walked in. 12 years had softened some of Margaret Monroe's edges while sharpening others. Her hair was more silver than brown now, but her posture still carried that same rigid righteousness that had made their house feel more like a church than a home. Samantha. Her mother's voice hadn't changed either. Sam's fingers found her knuckles, but she forced them still. "We're not open for another 20 minutes. I saw the article." Margaret sat at the counter, placing the magazine between them like evidence at a trial. "Is it true?" The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their steady drone a counterpoint to Sam's thundering heart. "Does it matter? You saved him." Something flickered in Margaret's eyes. Pride or pain? Sam couldn't tell anymore. "All those notes, while you were living in your car, studying whenever you could, you were saving someone else's child." The truth of those days hit Sam fresh. The cold mornings, the homework done by streetlight, the fears she'd poured into paper planes of hope for someone else because she couldn't bear to face her own. The bell chimed again. Nia burst in, clearly having run from the Bean, then stopped short at the scene before her. "Oh, hell no," she said, moving to stand beside Sam. "Not without backup." Margaret's eyes tracked between them. "You must be Nevia, the DJ therapist, among other things." Nia's hand found Sam's back, steadying, like being there when your daughter needed family. The word hung in the air like a judgment. Outside, the sun was rising, painting the world in shades of possibility and regret. "I followed your career," Margaret said suddenly, still looking at Sam, "through the church gossip, through mutual friends. Heard you were studying psychology, working here. I drove by sometimes, never coming in. Why now?" Sam's voice cracked. "Because some magazine made me sound noble. Because saving the broken boy fits better with your beliefs than having a broken daughter. Because I was wrong." The words fell like stones in still water. "When you told us, I was wrong. Samantha." The bell chimed a third time. Cassian walked in, then froze, reading the tension in the room. Sam watched his reflection in the window, how he straightened, professional mask sliding into place. "Mrs. Monroe," he said, and Sam heard echoes of the boy he'd been, the one who'd once sat in their living room studying physics. "I can come back." "No." Margaret stood. "You should hear this too. I've been carrying it too long." She turned back to Sam. "When you left, when we made you leave, I found something in your room. A notebook, filled with words about light and darkness, about seeing people's pain and wanting to help. I thought if I read it enough, I'd understand. But all I understood was that my daughter had more grace in her heart at 17 than I had learned in a lifetime of praying." Sam's hands gripped the counter, anchoring herself against memories threatening to pull her under. Nia's presence stayed steady beside her, while Cassian remained by the door, a silent witness to this unraveling. "I kept it," Margaret continued. "Your notebook. It's what made me start following your journey from afar, watching you build a life from the ashes of the one we burned." She reached into her bag, pulling out a worn composition book. "I thought, maybe it's time it came home." Sam stared at the notebook, her first one, where she'd drafted those early notes to Cassian, where she'd first written about her own truths, her own fears. "I can't," she stepped back. "You can't just, 12 years, Mom. 12 years of silence, of shame, of rebuilding myself in spaces that wouldn't reject me for existing." "I know." Margaret placed the notebook on the counter. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for a chance. I just needed you to know that your words, they didn't just save him. She glanced at Cassian. They've been saving me too. Slowly, painfully, teaching me that love isn't supposed to come with conditions. The morning light was stronger now, streaming through the windows in earnest. Sam looked at her mother, really looked at her, and saw something new in the familiar features. Uncertainty, hope, fear, the same emotions she'd been writing about all these years. Your father doesn't know I'm here, Margaret said softly. He's still learning. But I needed, after seeing the article, I needed you to know that not all breaks are permanent, even the ones we thought would never heal. Sam felt tears on her cheeks but couldn't remember starting to cry. Nia squeezed her shoulder once, then moved to make coffee, the universal language of processing heavy emotions. On the program Cassian's running, Sam found herself saying, the creative expression workshops. I'm going to be leading some of them, helping people find words for their pain, like you did with the notes. Margaret's smile was small but real. It suits you. Yeah. Sam looked at Cassian, still standing guard by the door. Some breaks reshape us into something stronger. She'd written those words to him once, lifetime ago. Now they came back, carrying new weight, new meaning. I should go, Margaret said. But maybe sometime. I work Tuesday mornings, Sam heard herself say. The coffee's fresh at 6. After Margaret left, the diner felt both emptier and fuller. Nia set 3 cups of coffee on the counter, one black, one with lavender honey, one with just a touch of cream. Well, she said, pulling out her phone, I think this calls for a new playlist. I'm thinking something about prodigal parents and the children who survived their absence. Sam picked up her old notebook, fingers tracing the worn cover. Inside, she knew, lay the seeds of who she'd become, the girl who believed in anonymous kindness, who wrote hope into existence one note at a time. You okay? Cassian asked softly, finally moving from his post by the door. No, she met his eyes. But maybe that's right too. Maybe some stories need to stay complicated. She opened the notebook to a random page, found her teenage handwriting staring back. Sometimes healing looks like holding 2 truths at once, the pain that shaped us, and the strength it carved into our bones. Your mother kept every word, Cassian said, sitting beside her. Like I did. Words are funny that way. Sam smiled through her tears. They keep living even when we think we're done with them. The morning crowd would arrive soon. Life would go on. But for now, in this liminal space between night and day, 3 people sat at a diner counter, drinking coffee and holding space for all the words still waiting to be spoken. In her current notebook, Sam wrote, some light breaks through slowly, like dawn approaching winter. Some breaks through all at once, like truth finally finding its voice. Both kinds can blind you. Both kinds can heal you. The trick is learning to keep your eyes open even when it hurts to see. The bean hummed with anticipation as evening settled into night. String lights twinkled overhead, and Nia had transformed the space into something between a coffee shop and a sanctuary. Mismatched journals and art supplies dotted the tables, each station a potential beginning. Sam stood near the small stage, her mother's returned notebook in her hands, while people filtered in for the first official creative expression workshop. Lauren was setting up an art station, her brother's birds now framed on the walls. Melody sat cross-legged on her usual floor cushion, already writing. Even Dawn from Walker's had come, looking both out of place and perfectly at home. Ready? Cassian asked, appearing beside her. Things between them had been different since her mother's visit. Not healed exactly, but evolving, like light finding new ways through familiar cracks. No, Sam admitted. But maybe that's the point. She watched as her mother slipped in quietly, choosing a seat near the back. They'd had 3 Tuesday morning coffees since that first day. Silent affairs mostly, but the silence felt less like a wall and more like a bridge under construction. Everyone, find a place that feels right, Sam called out, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Tonight isn't about perfection, it's about permission. To speak, to stumble, to start again. Nia began playing her newest playlist, soft instrumental pieces that seemed to hold space for words yet unspoken. Sam opened her old notebook, fingers trembling slightly. 12 years ago, I started writing notes to someone who needed light. Anonymous messages that I slipped into a locker before dawn. never knowing if they helped, never letting myself be known. She looked at Cassian, who nodded encouragingly. I thought I was hiding then, but really, I was finding my voice, learning that sometimes the words we write for others are also the words we need to hear ourselves. Lauren stood next, holding one of her brother's drawings. Sometimes we don't find the messages people leave until they're gone, but that doesn't make them less powerful. She touched her silver bracelet. Every bird my brother drew was a note saying, I was here, I mattered, I tried. And every playlist I make, Nia added from her spot behind the sound system, is a letter to someone who needs to feel less alone. Sometimes we speak in melody when words aren't enough. One by one, people began sharing. Melody reading poems about anxiety that felt like maps through darkness. Dawn surprising everyone with haikus about finding peace in pre-dawn truck stops. The evening unfolded like a collective exhale, each person adding their light to the growing constellation of stories. Sam moved between groups, listening, guiding, sometimes just bearing witness. She paused near her mother, who was writing steadily in a fresh journal. May I? Sam asked softly. Margaret nodded, turning the journal so Sam could read. Dear Samantha, every Tuesday morning, I watch you pour coffee with hands that once wrote hope into existence. I see how you've built yourself into someone stronger than our fears, kinder than our judgments. I'm learning that sometimes love means unlearning everything you thought you knew about it. Sam squeezed her mother's shoulder once, gently before moving on. Near the art station, Cassian was helping a teenager find words for his abstract paintings, and the sight made something shift in Sam's chest. Not the old ache of what was lost, but a new awareness of what was possible. She found her way to the small stage again, opening both notebooks, her old one and her current one. The group fell quiet, sensing a moment approaching. I want to read you something, she said. 2 pieces, written 12 years apart. The first is from when I was 17, homeless, and still writing notes to a boy I hoped would choose to stay alive. Some hearts break like dawn, slowly, then all at once, until light spills through every crack we tried to seal against hope. Maybe that's what saving someone looks like. Not filling their darkness with our light, but showing them how to find their own. She took a breath, then continued. And this is from last night. We talk about healing like it's a destination, some far shore where pain can't reach. But maybe it's more like learning to swim. Some days we float effortlessly. Some days we fight the current. Some days we sink and rise and sink again. But always, we keep moving, carrying each other when we can, carrying ourselves when we must, until we discover that healing isn't about reaching the shore at all. It's about finding peace in the journey, and beauty in the breaking, and strength in starting again. The room was silent when she finished, but it was a silence full of understanding. Nia let the music swell gently, providing a soft landing for the moment. Your turn, Sam said to the room. Write your truth, draw it, sing it, share it or keep it secret, but let it exist, let it matter. The next hour passed in a blur of creativity and connection. Sam watched as people found their voices in different ways, through color and line, through melody and metaphor, through words that had waited years to be spoken. Near closing time, as people began gathering their things, Cassian approached her again. He looked different somehow, more real than the polished mental health advocate or the broken boy she'd once known. I was wrong before, he said quietly, about trying to control the narrative. Some stories need to be messy. Some people too, Sam added, thinking of all the ways they'd both tried to reshape themselves into something more palatable, more inspirational. I have something for you. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. Not a grand gesture, just truth. Inside was a note, written on the same kind of paper she'd used for her anonymous messages years ago. Dear Sam, some breaks reshape us. Some breaks remind us. Some breaks become doors to who we're meant to be. You were all 3 for me, not just then, but now. Not just through notes hidden in lockers, but through every word you're brave enough to speak, every silence you're strong enough to hold, every story you help others tell. I'm not asking for a happy ending. I'm asking for a real one we write together, even when the words are hard, even when the light hurts, even when healing looks more like questions than answers. Stay, write with me, break and mend and break again. But this time, let's do it in the open, where our light can find each other. Sam looked up to find Nia watching them with a knowing smile. already queuing up what was undoubtedly the perfect song for the moment. Lauren was hanging one last bird drawing, its wings spread toward possibility. Her mother was writing something new in her journal, each word a small step across the chasm of years. In her notebook, both of them, old and new, Sam wrote her response. Some stories don't end. They evolve, like light through seasons, like hope through hardship, like love through time. They become not conclusions but beginnings, not destinations but doorways, not endings but openings into all the chapters yet to come. Yes, let's write them together. Outside, the night was clear, stars scattered like notes across the dark. Inside the bean, people lingered, holding on to the magic of vulnerability shared and received. Sam stood in the space between, feeling neither broken nor fixed but beautifully, imperfectly becoming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more workshops to plan, more bridges to build, more words to find. But for now, she let herself exist in this moment of collective light, where every crack in every heart made space for something new to grow. After all, some breaks don't need to be fixed. They just need to be understood, honored, and sometimes, when we're ready, filled with new light of our own making. 1 year later, the graduation cap felt strange on Sam's head as she stood in the community college auditorium. Her psychology degree had taken longer than most, but as she looked out at the faces in the crowd, she realized time had its own wisdom. Naya was there, her red dreadlocks now streaked with gold, recording everything for the playlist she'd titled, When Dreams Graduate. Lauren sat beside her, wearing her brother's silver bracelet and holding a sketchbook filled with birds in flight. In the middle row, Margaret Monroe sat next to her husband David, who had started coming to Tuesday morning coffee 2 months ago, his silence slowly softening into tentative questions about Sam's life. Cassian stood at the back, as he always did during important moments, giving her space to shine on her own. They'd learned that balance over the past year, how to hold each other without holding too tight, how to help without trying to fix, how to love the broken edges and the healing parts equally. After the ceremony, they gathered at the Bean, now officially renamed Lightkeepers Cafe. The creative expression workshops had grown into daily sessions, with people traveling from neighboring towns to attend. Sam's corner office, once just a dream scribbled in her notebook, was filled with letters from people who'd found their voice in the safe space she and Cassian had built together. A toast, Nia called out, passing around her signature lattes. To the girl who wrote hope into existence and grew up to teach others how to do the same. To anonymous notes that became open letters, Lauren added, pointing to the wall where her brother's birds now flew alongside artwork and poetry from workshop participants. To time, Margaret said softly, her hand finding David's. And grace. And second chances. Sam touched the necklace she wore, a small silver pen that Cassian had given her, engraved with the words, Some breaks become bridges. Her notebooks, both old and new, sat on her desk upstairs, no longer hiding places but chronicles of a journey still unfolding. Your turn, Cassian whispered, nodding toward the small stage where so many others had found courage to speak their truth. Sam stepped up, feeling the weight of all her past selves, the scared 17-year-old writing anonymous hope, the waitress hiding behind her notebook, the student learning to help others heal, the woman finally learning to claim her own light. A year ago, she began, I thought healing meant fixing what was broken. Now I know it means learning to write new stories with the pieces we have. She smiled at her gathered family, blood and chosen, past and present. Thank you for being my co-authors. Later that night, after the celebrations ended, Sam and Cassian sat in their usual spot by the Bean's window. She wrote in her newest notebook while he read over a proposal for expanding their program to more schools. What are you writing? He asked, noticing her smile. The next chapter, she replied, showing him the page. Some light never stops writing itself into existence. It finds new pages, new hearts, new ways to shine. It turns broken places into doorways, fear into courage, endings into beginnings, and sometimes, if we're brave enough to keep writing, it turns anonymous notes into love letters, silence into songs, and small acts of hope into lifetimes of light. Outside, stars scattered across the sky like period marks in an endless story. Inside him, the string lights twinkled like the dots Sam still placed above her ease, small ceremonies of hope, still writing themselves into existence, one word at a time. The end. At one point in your life, Have you been like Sam, keeping unspoken words in a notebook, or like Cassian, in desperate need of a message of hope? How does this story resonate with your own experiences of healing, brokenness, and new beginnings? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. Your feedback is very important to our work. Please leave a comment telling us what you think and where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any stories. Your participation is very important for the continuation of our work, so share it with those who will love this story.